Welcome, everyone, to Ghost Light. This is the podcast about the performing arts industry and what it takes to survive and thrive within it. Thanks for being here, and thank you especially to my guest, René Thornton Jr. You are one of the greats, in my opinion, and I'm humbled every time I get to be in your presence.
Thank you, friend. Appreciate that.
Well, for our audience who isn't as familiar with you, tell me a little bit about your career, and when you meet people out at a party, how do you describe what you do?
That's a good question. I usually describe myself as a Shakespearean, even though I am currently a card-carrying member of the Wizarding World. So I'm currently on tour on the first national tour of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which I have been doing since August of 2024. We are recording this in January of 2026. Prior to that, spent most of my career as a regional theater actor and primarily doing Shakespeare. And what is likely the most interesting thing about me is that I have performed professionally in all of the plays in Shakespeare's Folio. And so if I'm at a dinner party with rich people, then that is how I will introduce myself. I avoid mentioning that. When I'm having a conversation that is not with like rich theater people, I avoid that factoid as much as possible. It inevitably comes up.
How many actors do you suppose there are out there who have been in every single one of Shakespeare's plays?
Get asked that a lot, actually, and I do not know the answer, and I wish I did. I wish we had a club. I wish we got a little pin, though I still have my gift that the cast got me from that. You were there then. Yes, you were in those. You were in that show. You were even there when that happened. Yeah, I mean, the only other people I know who have done it were other ASD folks.
Right.
Allie and John and Chris, I think, are the only other people I know who have done it. I know two fight directors who have worked on all of the plays. Colleen Kelly being one of them, as a matter of fact. And
so the short answer is it's not a big club.
It is not a big club. No. And many thanks to Jim Warren and ASC for making that happen.
So you left ASC in 2020? Is that right?
No, earlier than that, at the end of 2017.
Earlier than that? Oh my goodness, yeah. Okay, yeah. And what happened? You left
almost
the American Shakespeare Center where you were for...
Yeah, so I was a resident company member at the American Shakespeare Center for 13 and a half years. I did 118 productions while I was there. I had many careers just in that 13 and a half years. So I left the ASC and I moved out west to California. And I ended up doing a bunch of shows in San Diego. Shout out to San Diego, America's perfect city. And then I ended up moving back east to join another resident company. And then the pandemic came and changed everything for everyone. Yeah.
Yes, it did indeed. I was just talking to Philip Orazio. Have you worked with him?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we worked at Utah Shakes together.
Yeah, we talked about how the pandemic comes up in almost every podcast because it was so transformative to everybody's career in the performing arts.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because the show I do now, obviously there's a bunch of people in their early 20-somethings in it, and to talk with them about like what it was trying to go to high school on Zoom or do college. I mean, I taught, so I know a little bit on the teacher end, but it's interesting to hear from what it was like to be in school during that challenging time.
Yeah. Well, so as someone who has been on both sides, what would you say are the starkest differences pre-COVID and now? We're now, how many years? 6 years after.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, there are things that are a lot better. You know, that time of quarantine was an opportunity for reflection and sort of peeling apart the systems that we use to work together and examining those and coming up with some better options. So in some ways, the industry is a lot better than it was pre quarantine because there's a greater push as a whole to remember that we are people and not products. So that's great. Of course, the flip side of that is that people don't go out as much, people don't have money as much. So theater is struggling because people aren't buying tickets. And so that, of course, is the downside. And it was certainly, as someone who was teaching during quarantine and immediately after quarantine, that first batch of students that I had when we were finally back in a classroom was really intense. They had done basically their senior year of high school and their first year of college on Zoom, and had to learn how to be around people again and get up and perform in front of people. And emotions were all over the place. And that was a challenging time. Yes.
I was teaching at that time as well at James
Yeah.
Madison University.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was fascinating. I will say, though, I always like to say that it was not all gloom and doom on Zoom, because I do think students who otherwise had social anxieties, when they were then left to create by themselves, actually blossomed. And I had a student in a class, one of my Zoom voice classes, which is a crazy thing to teach over Zoom. And this young woman really exploded on Zoom in a way that she absolutely would not have in the classroom. She was, those weeks we had in the classroom before we got shipped off to Zoom. She was very quiet. She hardly said a word. It was very difficult to get her to participate, but being able to create on her own, she came up with such beautiful and extraordinary things. And it was so cool to watch her discover these new things about herself in this situation that she otherwise would not have found herself in.
That's so cool. You know what? It just happened for me, which is I just realized a transformative moment for me was during teaching Zoom in COVID. Haven't thought about this in years, but I was teaching acting during COVID in quarantine, and we had a Zoom acting class, but it taught me some of the interesting things that were possible on Zoom, in that we would hide non-video participants. And so someone who would be performing a monologue, for everyone in the class, everybody else would turn off their video, and then we would all be looking at the person performing in full screen. And that actually worked, right? It was very similar to an audience in the dark, and here's the subject. And then we would pop back in and have a conversation, and then we'd work the monologue again.
Yeah.
And I think so much of that time I've kind of filed away and been like, I'm just not going to think about that again. But talking to you brought it back up, and it's very connected to kind of some of the exploratory work I've been doing with, what is live broadcast theater or live broadcast performance on a micro independent scale look like with these new tools.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
So tell me about touring with Harry Potter.
Yeah, touring is wild. I mean, the great caveat of being on this tour is that everyone I know who has done sort of big national Broadway tours has been like, Renee, if you ever do another tour, you will be very disappointed because our tour is a tier 1 tour, and there are only 3 other shows out there that are on tier 1 contracts. And so we get treated better than other tour actors do. Yes. And our schedule is a little more forgiving. One of the worst things I think about the tour actors and the touring contract, and as a matter of fact, just yesterday, Equity sent out a survey to touring actors because the contract negotiation is coming up this summer. And one of the things I talked about was that I think it is an abomination that people are expected to have their day off also be a travel day, because what a travel day is most certainly not is a day off. Traveling is crazy, especially if you're dealing with airports and weather and other people and but because our show is so huge, it takes forever to move it from one city to the next. We get layoffs in between each city, which isn't great in its own way, but does help sort of break up the Groundhog Day-ness of tour life. But it's cool, it's cool to be able to travel to cities that I've always been curious about. I got to live in Chicago for 6 months last year and see what that kind of life would be like. And then I lived in LA for 4.5 months, and then I lived in DC for 3 months. And, now in the last 5 months, I've lived in Rhode Island and in Boston and in Ohio and and in North Carolina. Now I'm in Florida. So this schedule of being 2 to 3 weeks at a location is kind of fun, because you get to have, a more of an experience in these places than you would if you were there for only a week or just a couple days on vacation. But then you also are not anywhere long enough to sort of get tired of it, and you get to move on to the next place. So that's pretty good. Some of their beautiful, beautiful old theaters around America, and it's very cool to get to perform in them. Some crazy giant theaters that I don't understand why you would build a theater that seats 4,000 people, but I will be performing in it in Atlanta and in St. Louis. Tour life is wild. Tour life is the best and the worst of all things.
What's the best and what's the worst? If you have to pick
the
one.
best is easily the travel, followed closely by the paycheck. And the worst is the sort of detached life that you lead when you're not at home. I just have no connection to my real life, my people, my existence, my future. It's a very sort of in between kind of liminal existence of what is time and what is space and where am I? And that stuff's all very weird. And mostly I try not to.
In a way, I mean, that's the complete opposite of your experience at the American Shakespeare Center, where you were one place for 13 years, often with the same company of actors and even very similar audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And, constantly, that being in a rep company, the best part about being in a rep company is that you're constantly being challenged by new things. There's always new lines to learn. There's always new, and you're doing a bunch of plays at once. And so you're being pulled in a bunch of different directions, doing the same show, in next week. I think it's next week. We'll hit 500 performances, which is by large magnitude the most number of performances of a single show I have ever done, and still have 9 more months of this contract to go. Right. So another 300 at least down the line. Yeah. I got sidetracked by thinking about how crazy it is to do 500 performances of a single show. And not be tired of it, and somehow not
that
be
is
tired.
one of the things that. So tell me, how is that possible? Because that's always been the fear for me of doing a show.
Yeah, me
where
too.
you're
I
on
mean,
Broadway and you're just doing it again and again.
Yeah. Before we started, I was like, I don't know how this year is going to work out. That sure seems a lot of the same. But I think, again, it's the tour of it. It would be very different if I was doing the same show and not traveling. That would be a different experience. It also helps because, the reality of the fact is that I do very little acting in this show. I mostly am a glorified set changer. And so that's a very easy thing to kind of do on the daily that doesn't cost a lot of my sort of spirit in the way that if I had 500 performances of Lear would be a very different thing, and
Right.
a lot more challenging. And I do have a cover track, and so like that gets to shake it up every now and then. We have so many swings and covers that there's 36 people in our cast, so like there's always someone out, someone's on vacation, someone's gotten ill, and so you're constantly getting new people doing things, and that just we've had one of our leads made their cover leads made their debut this weekend, and so the last 4 shows we've had a brand new person as one of our leads, and so that adds a new energy and excitement to the show. And I think perhaps most importantly, I actually honestly and truly love the show, and
Mm.
so like I love how excited people get by watching it. Fandoms are crazy experiences. And I've never really, I mean, Shakespeare fans certainly can be eclectic, eccentric in their own way. As a large truck. Sorry, everyone. My window is broken. And so I cannot close my windows. Someone's supposed to be coming today to fix it. Okay.
That it adds atmospheric reality to our
Yeah.
podcast. That's
Yes,
perfect.
exactly. So yeah, that's I think how I much to my surprise, have continued to find this show interesting. I mean, even when the idea first came up of doing a second year, I was like, really? A whole other year? But then it's like, yeah, of course. For this kind of money? Absolutely. Good Lord.
So I want to get into that. We need to talk about that. But something you brought up, something crystallized for me this last year, because you went on to continue performing in new venues, and I went on to open a couple of businesses. And
Yes.
I realized last year that the thing I love about performing and the thing I love about businesses is what you just mentioned, which is when the audience or the guest or the consumer, whenever that person is very well satisfied, right? And with what you made. So after, either that's the applause or afterwards coming up to you after the show saying, "This was amazing. Thank you so much."
Yeah.
Or in my world, at the burger restaurants, when someone's like, "That is the best burger I've ever had." That's the thing I'm addicted to. It's not so much like, I think I've always been told as an actor that the applause is very egocentric. And I think I recognized I don't believe that. I think it's
Yeah.
about the fact that it's the proof that they enjoyed it
Yeah.
that makes me so
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with a show like this, like people love their Potter. Like they show up in
Oh, yeah.
costume. They've got their house scarves. They've got their house robes. They've got their wands. Like they are ready to experience in real time this thing that they have read about and watched in many a movie. And
Mm.
some people really have built their whole selves around this universe. And so it's cool to be able to give them that experience, to be part of giving that experience. You see it after the shows. Just some people are the smiles are so big and the eyes are so bright, and like they got to experience magic. Fun.
I went to Disney last year with our two little
Yes.
girls and
Just down the road
my
here.
wife's
Yes.
family, just down the road from where you are. And man,
Yes.
I went into that thinking, this trip isn't for me, right? This is for our kids. My wife's family loves Disney, and so it was kind of like I'm there to also serve them and for them to have a great experience. And in my mind, I was thinking Disney wasn't going to be that fun for me.
Yeah.
On about day 3, it took a minute, but
Mm.
the amount of fandom, the amount of joy was infectious.
Yeah.
And it totally took me over. And since then I've become really invested and obsessed with Walt Disney as a human
Mm.
and the company and just how they built it and how they created so much happiness for people.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's
It's hard to be in the face of that and stay jaded. I think people
Yes.
probably can feel the same way about Harry Potter. They look at it, oh, that's so silly. But when you are faced with people who really love it, it's like, no, it's not silly. It's
Well, and
cool. And they they get so much joy from it that for you to be a part of it.
yeah, absolutely. I certainly had friends who have come to see the show sort of begrudgingly for various reasons, and then afterwards are crying because they're like, okay, but this is actually a really like beautiful piece of theater. And you're like, yeah, it is. That is why it's awesome to do. I would not probably still be doing it if it were
Yeah. And
not
it
a
actually,
thing I enjoyed.
I think
Yep.
there's a lie we tell ourselves in the performing arts, which is that people aren't coming out to see entertainment. And maybe they're not in as great quantity as they used to, but this conversation and Harry Potter, I think, is proof that no, people will come out and they will pay for the right experience, for the experience that they want.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, currently performing in a theater with 2,800 seats, and those seats look pretty full.
Yeah. Yep. We did. I went back and did a show recently for the first time in years, and I was in A Christmas Carol.
That's right.
And I mean, talk about that's a cash cow for theaters all across the country at Christmas time. But
Gets them
man,
every time.
it was full every night. So
Yeah.
when you have the entertainment people are interested in, they'll they'll come buy a ticket.
If you build it, they will come.
Okay, I have a 3-part question for you.
Okay, great. I'm ready. One, two, three.
So in the American Shakespeare Center chapter of your life, 13 years as a repertory company member, what did success look like then? What does success look like for you now? And what does success look like for you going forward? So start back
Okay.
in your repertory days.
Sorry.
What did
Yeah,
success look
yeah.
like then?
I mean, that job for me was what success looked like. Like that job was my dream
Mm.
job. All I ever wanted, all I ever wanted was to be a actual working actor. Like I wanted to be not a working auditioner, not a working meetings with casting directors. I wanted to actually be a working actor. I wanted to actually act in things. I wanted to actually act in classic plays. And I wanted to make plays with the same group of people because I think that's a better way of making plays. And so the American Shakespeare
Mm.
Center, or when I arrived, it was called Shenandoah Shakespeare, was the job I always wanted. And so, as long as I was continuing to get the roles I was interested in, which I did, thankfully, because the artistic director there, Jim Warren, was a fan and he and I really connected on great levels. And so I got to play dream roles in a dream job. And so that for me was success then. It was also, 13 and a half years is a crazy long time. But for me, it wasn't actually that long because my first job out of grad school, or second, I guess, was the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where there had actors there who had been company members there for 30 years. So I was like, a decade is, but that's nothing compared to the lives that these
Right.
people have led. And so, like, that was always in my head the entire time I was at the ASC because I had had that experience at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival first. And so, whenever people would be like, "You've been here so long," I'm like, "It's not really that long." And I, when I first got there, it was a job that I went to an audition that I saw in backstage. I don't even know if backstage exists anymore. Um, and I thought I would go to Virginia for 8 months and then I would return back to New York City and continue doing that. Uh, and then they offered me another job, and people back in New York were like, okay, enough. When are you coming back what's going on? What are you doing down there? But then as it turned into year 4 and year 5 and year 6, then people were like, so how do I get a job down there? How do I get like, people are like, oh no, look, Renee's actually like working all the time. I mean, who's doing
Yeah.
9 to 11 plays a year? Who's doing that? Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. Even if you are like a super successful performer, you're doing 3 to 4 plays a year, maybe like 5 on like a excellent year. So like that's insane, and it was exhausting, and I will probably never work that hard again. But what an incredible opportunity. So that was, I was experiencing what success looked like then. I felt very
Okay.
successful in my career. Still do, I guess. Currently, I guess that's the same. I feel successful because I am working, which
Yeah.
is not easy in this industry, especially in these post quarantine days where people are working a lot less because there's a lot less theaters to work in. And I am currently working on like the highest paid theater job that you can have without being, a big celebrity. And so like that feels pretty successful. So I'm
Absolutely.
feeling pretty good about that. The future is sort of interesting because I am definitely in this place right now of like, I don't exactly know what I want the future to look like or what comes next for me, or I do not know. So I do not yet know what success looks like in the future. There are, it's one of the funny things about when you had now done this career for as long as I somehow have at this point, I have been in equity for 25 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But like, as you get older in this industry, the jobs start becoming less and less. And I was talking with a friend the other day and I was like, what I actually haven't ever done is like play the long list of dads in contemporary theater. Like there's a bunch of great dads out there that I've never played any of those parts. Oh, God knows I've played my fair share of Shakespeare's fathers since I was like 25. And and I think about directing sometimes because like I have a lot of opinions about Shakespeare plays, obviously, and it gets kind of weird sometimes when you've done a play 7 times, sort of sitting in a room and like how many times can I listen to people reinvent the wheel, and like maybe it's time to just sort of take my
Yeah.
own ideas and put them into action because God knows I have opinions. Uh, But I've always sort of been hesitant about directing. There's a part of me that wants to be an artistic director somewhere. There's a part of me that wants to be a kept woman for someone independently wealthy, and so I can live in the Italian Riviera. So there's lots of options of things that I would like to do with the next chapter. I just got to figure out what.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. There are many paths. I
Always.
think. Yeah. Always. Right.
Always. And you
The
never
world is
know.
our
I mean,
oyster.
what is so crazy about this career is it's just constantly unknown. I mean, even when I had a pretty guaranteed job that still was unknowns, like you just still didn't know.
Yeah.
Um, and so you just got to live in and be okay. You got to be okay with the unknown to do this career. You got to be okay with it.
It's funny that you mentioned a secure job, and the thing I think I'm learning is there's just no such thing. There's no such thing as job security. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's a comforting thing we tell ourselves
Yeah.
that there's security in it. But if we learned anything from going through a pandemic, it's that things can change rather quickly. And as we're looking at the political landscape, and I'm about as centrist and hands off politics as I've ever been in my life. But without really trying to say anything good or bad about it, I think it's pretty objective to say it's volatile. And in a way that it hasn't ever been, in my experience so far in my almost 40 years of being alive.
Look at you, almost 40.
It's 40 this year.
Happens to all of us if we're lucky. Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you have for someone getting started now? Or what advice would you give yourself if you were starting out now and
You
wanting
know,
to
I don't
be
know.
an actor?
The the world is so different. The world is so different. Industry is so different. I work with someone who dreams of being a reality TV star. And you're like, at first, because I'm old, I was like, what? But then as I thought about it more, I was like, right, no, sure. Like you've grown up, they're all of 27 or something like that. Like they grew up in a world where like that's a totally reasonable career path that people in this industry have. Like that's
Hmm.
sure. Why not? Um,
Right.
and people make verticals, soap opera verticals. Like like there's
Mm.
so much content, so much being produced. How any of it pierces through the noise, who knows? Like if anyone figures out that recipe, like enjoy your millions. And it is disheartening, as I have seen a little bit less with this show just because the demands of the show are a bit different. But, in some of the regional theater jobs I've done before this tour, training is not what it once was. Big outdoor spaces, people have a hard time filling them. Everybody's getting microphone now, even for like Shakespeare plays. And I don't love any of that. And so, like, because I'm old school in that way, like get some training. Like I think if you are serious about a lifetime of this, then get yourself the most tools that you can to make that happen. Um,
Mm.
I think,
I like that advice.
yeah, I don't know, like I'm glad I'm not 22 stepping out into the world right now. For a bunch of reasons. But especially like, like we've been talking about, like theaters are closing all over the place. And so like, how are you filled with like hope of your future when the future does not look so great? Um, but because so for me, like what is also great about training is not only do I think training is essential, uh, for your art and a career in your art. But training was also essential. I mean, lifelong friendships that I've made from people that I went to training, but also lifelong connections, the jobs that I have gotten because of people that I met when I was in undergrad or grad school, the people who I knew then who now run theaters, the people who
Hmm.
I knew then who are now in casting. School is not only an opportunity for training, but it's also an opportunity for networking. And if this business is anything, it is about who you know.
Good advice. I think the thing I like about that advice, Renee, is it recognizes this art form, like most art forms, is ancient and there's this whole history behind it. And so even though the world and the forms continue to evolve and change, and we have new technologies that are, being invented at a higher and higher rapidity, but there's something about this that is so quintessentially simple. It's so about getting the basics right, which
Mm.
I think the thing that happens to younger artists is they gloss over the details because they seem unimportant. And doing something simply and well is a lot harder than it looks, right?
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Yeah. Absolutely.
So but if you can, and if you get the training and you spend the time developing those skills, you create a structure on which to build any kind of work that may arise in the future,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
which is what you did and are doing, I think.
Yeah. You got to be flexible to ride the wave. um, and, and because a lot of the people I know who I have known for the length of my career who no longer do this, some of those people no longer do this because they were uninterested in being flexible enough to ride the wave. They had very just sort of specific ideas of, I want to do this kind of thing and only this kind of thing. And if that isn't going to work out, then I'll go do something else. Uh, yeah.
Right. I've got a
Yeah.
question for you.
I hopefully have an answer for you.
Okay. Why storytelling? Why theater? Why do we need to preserve it moving forward and not just go totally to TV, entertainment, streaming?
Mm. So when you said you had a question, you had like a big question.
Just a little question for you. We're
Just a little
dying to know
question.
the answer, Renee. We're dying to know the answer. And I'm sure you have it.
I do, actually. I do, because what we can access as humans communally in real time and real space, breathing the same air, is greater than what we can access as human beings individually, staring at screens or listening to audios. I think that, my whole existence on this planet Earth, someone has been talking about the death of theater, despite the fact that it's like the oldest living thing that we as humans do, right? So it's not going anywhere. It just changes shape.
Mhm.
And I think we have an innate human need for not just the telling and hearing of stories, but for sharing the experience of stories as a community. That laughing with other people is different than laughing alone. Crying with other people is different than crying alone. Experiencing humanity is better with other people. And that to me is like what makes theater so extraordinary, is that despite all of our differences, we can have the same exact reaction to something, which is that's extraordinary. What? That defies logic, frankly. And it's just proof that theater can access something eternal and greater than us. And I think it's why we will continue to make it.
When we were working together at the American Shakespeare Center, I remember a study being passed around that the audience, their heartbeat will sync up as they watch a play.
Mm. Yeah.
Do you remember that? Did you read
I
that?
do. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Which makes sense, like, and
Yeah.
there's something to be gained from experiencing that, and obviously, like, there are
Yeah.
a bunch of people out there who go their whole lives and never experience live theater, and I'm sure live happy and fulfilled lives, but they're missing out. And their lives could be happier and more fulfilled if they experienced community in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I hope we find a suitable path forward that rewards people who are willing to do the hard work and create real value for the audiences and creates community. And I hope we can figure it out, but we'll see. Maybe when you're artistic director, your
Yes.
company will figure that out, right? Okay, how about some rapid fire questions to close this out?
I love it. All right, let's
Okay.
go.
I don't have these written down, so I'm just
Oh,
rapid
okay,
fire
great.
was coming right from my brain.
How
Favorite
rapid is
Shakespeare
your
play?
Winter's Tale?
What is one thing that needs to change in the American theater?
The casting process.
Mm. Funniest moment you can remember on stage?
So many, but the very first thing that comes to mind is when we did The Importance of Being Earnest at the American Shakespeare Center, and Benjamin Kearns and I were playing Jack and Algy. There was a part in the show where in the script it says Jack and Algy come in singing some patter song, like something from Pinafore or something like that. And in rehearsal, Benj was like, I don't know that song. And I was like, well, why don't we just do something that we both know? And so we did some pop song. And then the next time we rehearsed that scene, we did some other song. And the next time we rehearsed that scene, we did some other song. And finally, the director, Joe Moran, was like, okay, sure. And so for the entire run of that show, every day, Ben Kearns and I mean, we were doing it at rep, so not actually every day, a couple times a week. Ben Kearns and I would do a different song, but we would decide what song we were going to do right before we did it. And so we would literally stand backstage behind the door being like, okay, we'll do this. And then maybe we'll like figure out a little choreo, and then we would go out and do it. And this is what we did for 6 months. And so some days we would make ourselves laugh. Often we would make the girls laugh. Always we would make the audience laugh. And those are the funniest moments that I have ever had on stage, without question.
That's fantastic. All right. How about thrust, proscenium, or theater in the round?
Ooh. In the round, then thrust, then proscenium.
Favorite living playwright?
Ooh. I don't do playwrights for a life. I only do dead playwrights. I mean, I joke, but that's true. I don't, to be honest, I don't think I have a favorite living playwright. I just don't spend
All right.
a
How
lot
about
of
this?
time.
Favorite playwright other than Shakespeare?
Christopher Marlowe.
Okay. And finally, the first word that comes to mind for the year 2026.
Oh, God. Hopeful. Hopeful.
I love that. René, I love you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being willing to share your thoughts and all your opinions with us. You're a smart guy.
I am honored that you wanted to chat with me, and I am grateful to get to hang out for a bit with my friend.
The best part about seeing you on a screen is how it'll feel the next time you and I are in the same space and I can give you a hug.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Have a great
you.
rest of your day, a great rest of your tour. I hope I get to see it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.